Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thanks, Senator Blackburn. Senator Klobuchar.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, for this important hearing. Mr. Rosenbaum, last month, Senator Portman and I traveled to Ukraine. We met with President Zelensky and Defense Minister Reznikov for over an hour. We went to Irpin and saw the apartment buildings blown out. We went to Bucha, saw the mass grave, and it was just something I'm never going to forget. The barbarism of Vladimir Putin up front and center. I understand you've also traveled to Ukraine. Can you say a bit more about your experience there and how it's motivated your work to lead the Justice Department's War Crime Accountability Team?
Certainly. Thank you, Senator. So we have had similar experiences, though I must say I have not been to any of the scenes of atrocity crimes. But on June 21, Attorney General Garland led a team, mostly Justice Department personnel, but also Ambassador Van Schaack and Sarah Langenkamp from the State Department. Also, FBI was represented, and we had Clint Williamson of the ACA group with us as well. And I should note that Ms. Langenkamp, as some of you may know, was killed in a bicycling accident in Bethesda just a few years ago, and she was really one of the heroes in supporting the people of Ukraine through these nightmarish times. It's a terrible loss for her family especially, but really for the cause of justice and humanity. It was an experience unlike anything I've ever had in nearly 4 decades of working on cases involving human rights crimes, because in all the other cases I've worked on, the criminal activity was completed. Sometimes it had been completed decades earlier, as was true for World War II Nazi crimes. But here we were in a war zone. And it was so inspiring to see the courage of our colleagues in the Office of the Ukrainian Prosecutor General at a time when the military situation was arguably much worse than it is now. And they were determined to continue fighting for justice, but you could see on their faces the shock and the despair. Yeah. As I'm sure you witnessed, one of the prosecutors was actually wearing his combat fatigues. So I will say that visit was about a week after the Attorney General asked me to take on the Ukraine task. Yeah. And I greeted it with some trepidation. Is this something that I really could make a difference in? And by the time we left Ukraine, I knew that if I would do everything within my power with my colleagues at the Human Rights and Special Prosecution Section and elsewhere in the department to make a difference.
Oh, thank you. Could you just briefly answer the next questions? Can swift prosecution of war crimes that occurred early in a conflict, just based on your past experience, help to deter future crimes from being committed as the conflict continues? You're talking about that this is different because it's ongoing.
Senator, I do personally believe that. It's one of the fundamental bases of criminal prosecution is deterrence. And prosecuting as soon as possible, as soon as one responsibly can prosecute, perpetrators of crimes, we do believe has a deterrent effect.
How are the atrocities in Ukraine similar to the Nazi-era war crimes you have spent decades prosecuting? And what steps can you take today to ensure that the future prosecutions are successful?
Well, there are certainly areas of overlap, including fundamentally the invasion of a peaceful land, Ukraine, which has now suffered massive invasions twice within living memory. Rampant war crimes and crimes against humanity. So again, that has similarities to crimes that invading Nazi German forces perpetrated in Ukraine and Poland and elsewhere. From a law enforcement perspective, if I may say, there's a number of differences, one of which is that the country that has presumably the largest quantum of evidence is Russia. And whereas in the Nazi cases, the Hitler regime was succeeded by a responsible West German government, which has provided for decades now extensive assistance in those Nazi cases. We're not expecting assistance from the Russian government anytime soon. As to what can be done, we're obviously tracking the crimes, working closely with our Ukrainian colleagues and other efforts in Europe. I was privileged to represent the Attorney General at the Ukraine Accountability Conference, ministerial conference in July. 45 nations, I've never seen anything like that, 45 nations agreed that they would work together to document the crimes, to provide the Ukrainians with the assistance that they need, and do whatever it takes, basically, to achieve accountability.
I just have one last question, Mr. Chairman, if you don't mind. The world knows about Russian atrocities in Ukraine in large part because of the extensive reporting that journalists are doing every day. These journalists are exposing Vladimir Putin's brutality, combating the lies being spread at great personal risk. Many journalists have been killed by Russian forces while covering the war, including Brent Reno, an American citizen, and Fox News cameraman Pierre Zachevsky, an Irish citizen. Without getting into any specific case, can you speak to the department's efforts to investigate the killing of journalists in Ukraine?
As the Attorney General has said publicly, that is definitely an area of interest, of strong interest for the department. Those were horrible victimizations, and our hearts go out to the families, of course. When American citizens have been harmed or killed in Ukraine, there is potential jurisdiction for the United States, and I can't go further than that, except to say that we are paying close attention.
All right.
And our own investigations are vigorously pursued.
Okay, thank you.
Senator Klobuchar, Senator Tillis.